Hi, and welcome back to this Monday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Now, I want to start this segment talking about the moral umbrage that the left has taken to Anthony Weiner's conduct. You have the mayor in San Diego. He is a Democratic mayor, Filner. He's now been credibly charged with sexually harassing at least 7 women in his proximity. And again, the left is covering for him. Now, there's this relentless drumbeat now of even Democrats and liberals wanting Mayor Filner to step down in San Diego, and this relentless drumbeat of liberals and Democrats trying to pressure Anthony Weiner to drop out of the mayoral race. And he said, look, I'm not going anywhere, and why should he? I mean, Bill Clinton didn't have to leave office. He survived. He's making $60 million a year giving speeches all around the world. So that's the future that Anthony Weiner sees for himself. Didn't hurt Bill Clinton. Why should it hurt me? What I've done is actually less destructive than what Bill Clinton did. And what he's failed to understand is the left lionizes Bill Clinton, and they have a visceral dislike for Anthony Weiner. He's just not a very likable guy. And if the mainstream media turns on you, it doesn't matter, and nothing else matters, they're going to demonize you, and so they're trying to get rid of him. And so he's just this incredibly bad miscalculation on Anthony Weiner's part. Even the left, it turns out, has got some kind of threshold beyond which they cannot be pushed, and Anthony Weiner's pushed beyond that. But even the left has been covering for Mayor Filner. I read an Associated Press story on his case late last week, and I was waiting to see when and if the Associated Press would identify his party affiliation. And I read and I read and I read. It wasn't until the 23rd paragraph, I counted. It took them 23 paragraphs to identify Mayor Filner as a Democrat. Now, if he'd been a Republican, that would have been in the first paragraph. In fact, it would have been in the first line of the story. Republican Mayor Bob Filner, or whatever his first name is, and so forth. But because he was a Democrat, they covered for him just as long as they possibly could. Now, here's Bob Schieffer, clip number 1. Here is Bob Schieffer talking on Sunday about the Anthony Weiner affair. We'll play it, and then I'm going to come back and kind of redo what Bob Schieffer said and substitute Bill Clinton's name for it. Here's Bob Schieffer yesterday on Sunday talking about the Anthony Weiner affair.
What can be said about the Anthony Weiner story that hasn't been said before? Actually, several things. 1, it is not funny. It is sickening. 2, it is important. The mayor of New York is not only the most powerful municipal post in America, but because New York is so big and is the media capital of the world, the mayor of New York occupies a bully pulpit, second in bullyishness only to that of the White House. The rest of us may not like it, but what the mayor of New York says matters far beyond the New York City limits, which is why someone with Anthony Weiner's problems has no business there and should leave the race. Anthony Weiner is not an entertaining kook. He is a new age flasher who has traded the traditional raincoat that can be opened to show his wares for a digital camera that enables him to expose himself to the world, a dubious technological achievement. Why would anyone put themselves and their loved ones through something like this? I wouldn't pretend to know. But a friend of a friend said, in today's world, there are those who value power above dignity. That's probably right. But even in politics, I want to believe they are still a minority.
Well, they're not a minority. The people who value power above dignity, I think they're a majority. I mean, that's why they go to D.C. They hunger for power. And they will value power above dignity. They'll make the trade-off every single day of the week. And part of the reason is because of people like Bob Schieffer in the liberal media that will defend those that are guilty of sexual misconduct, like a Bill Clinton. They will defend them. They will exonerate them. They will cover for them. They will actually defend them and celebrate them despite their sexual misconduct. So that's how you get a culture where you have power valued above dignity, because the media cooperates with that. They are enablers in all of this. Let's play clip number 2, Rob, while we are there. This is George Will talking about what I mentioned just earlier, the way Filner would have been treated if he were a Republican mayor of New York or San Diego, and the way Weiner would have been treated if he was a Republican candidate for mayor of New York City. Let's listen.
I will not dwell on the fact, although it is a fact, that if these two people, the Filner in San Diego and Weiner here, were Republicans,
Mayor facing charges of sexual harassment.
Republicans, this would be part of a lot of somber sociology in the media about the Republican war on women. I will skip that.
So I said, I'll skip that. This would be all about the war on women. There would be all this serious hand-wringing and sober social psychology about what has gone wrong with the Republican Party. Instead, you get protection and cover-up. But I want you to repeat, let me just retool what Bob Schieffer said. I've got it in my column today. But retool what Bob Schieffer said, only substitute Bill Clinton's name for it. One, Bob Schieffer says, it is not funny. What happened with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, it is not funny. It is sickening. Two, it is important. The presidency of the United States is not only the most powerful political post in the world, but because Washington is the political capital of the world, the president occupies a bully pulpit. The rest of us may not like it, but what the president says matters far beyond the D.C. city limits and even the borders of America, which is why someone with Bill Clinton's problems has no business there and should leave the White House. Why would anyone put themselves and their loved ones through something like this? I wouldn't pretend to know, but a friend of a friend said, in today's world, there are those who value power above dignity. That would be Bill Clinton, and that would be Hillary Clinton. She, too, values power above dignity. She was willing to be humiliated in the eyes of the world out of her ambitious grasp for power. She valued power above even her own dignity. So that's Bob Schieffer, if he had been using the same standard he used on Anthony Weiner to apply to Bill Clinton. And like I say in the column, it's never too late for the left to discover that God has been right all along, that sex is something designed exclusively for the union of one man and one woman in marriage. But this discovery is connected to their visceral dislike of Weiner and not, in fact, to their newfound allegiance to truth and morality. In other words, if they had some kind of discovery of truth and morality here, if the light had dawned, if this was actually about sexual morality, then they would be saying the same things, would have said the same things about Bill Clinton, would even be saying them in retrospect. They would be saying, hey, why are Bill and Hillary complaining? They're just as guilty of this as Anthony Weiner is, instead of trying to defend Bill and Hillary. That discovery, unfortunately, I say, is going to have to wait for another day or for the next Republican sex scandal. So that's what's going on the Anthony Weiner front. And generally on the marriage front, got a couple of pieces here, and then we'll open up the phones, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. And this is not an encouraging development. According to the study, Marriage, More Than a Century of Change, the U.S. marriage rate has dropped to 31.1. That means 31 marriages for every 1,000 women. So the marriage rate now is down to 31 per 1,000 women. In 1920, so this is a century ago, roughly, the marriage rate was 92.3. So in other words, the marriage rate today is a third of what it was in 1920. Women are getting married today at one-third the rate they were getting married in 1920. The average age of a woman when she is first married is now 27 years old. For guys, it is 29, and women who marry late are much less likely to remarry if the initial marriage doesn't work out. So I'd be curious what you think about why this is. In your estimation, your judgment, why is the marriage rate so low in America compared to what it used to be? What do you think is the reason for that? What do you think the explanation for that is? 888-589-8840 is the number to call. And then we got a story about unisex uniforms that have now been designed for members of the United States military. A new combat uniform with special consideration for the female body is now available at Fort Gordon. It's called the Combat Uniform Alternate. It has narrower, I will read this without comment. It has narrower shoulders, a slightly tapered waist, and a more spacious seat. for men and women with a smaller or more slender body. So this is designed to be a unisex uniform. Women can purchase it, and if a male is smaller in size, then this is a uniform that he may want to order. The service is developing body armor, flight suits, and physical training uniforms for women. This is all in anticipation of women going into combat positions in 2016. They've got to retool the body armor because the body armor is designed for male, upper body males, is bigger and heavier. It's too heavy for the women. They can't navigate with it, so they've got to get smaller. It's got to be lightweight. It's got to be thinner. What does that mean? It means less protection. So in other words, to get it to work, you want your soldiers in combat to be protected. They have body armor to protect them. And there are certain reasons it's the size and strength and weight that it is, because they want to get maximum protection and still enable that soldier to be nimble and agile and portable. So it's designed for maximum protection. What they're saying, if we're going to put women in combat, they can't handle that body armor. It's too heavy for them. It's too thick. It impedes their movements. So we've got to trim it down. We've got to thin it down. It's got to weigh less. It's got to be thinner. What does that mean? It means less protection for the women who are in combat. And I say, look, no nation that cares about women should expose them to that kind of physical risk, but that is where we are headed. They're going to do the same thing with flight suits, same thing with physical training uniforms for women. And they keep saying that they're not going to lower the standards, but it's impossible. There is no possible way that you can have women qualify for infantry positions unless you lower the standards. You've got to lower the standards for stamina, for upper body strength, because there's no way that even a woman who is fit is going to be able to match the same standards of a male who is similarly fit. Just can't be done. God didn't make him that way. It's his fault. Feel free to blame him. He says, look, I'll take the blame. I told you, first page of the Bible, I didn't make them interchangeable. I made them male and female. They are different. They're not like Lego blocks where they're interchangeable. They each have created, designed differently for different purposes and different roles in society. You ignore that, God says, you ignore it at your own peril. So what do you think about unisex uniforms? Back into Focal Point AFR Talk.